Now I'm here to speak about happiness and the factors that are said to lead to it. I know, presumptuous. So now, what's very interesting about these factors is that all of us kind of know about them. You know, after all, they've been around for ages. Uh, and in this permanence, in this immutability of the factors, lies the paradox of happiness. All of us want happiness. All of us kind of know where happiness exists. And yet, so few of us are genuinely happy. Yes, so few, because those gleeful photographs on Instagram and Facebook notwithstanding. So, with this in mind, I intend my talk today to be about three main themes. One, reiterating the well known paths of happiness. Two, pinpointing the inbuilt impediments in these paths. And three, suggesting certain ways to counter these impediments. So, what are the well known paths of happiness? Broadly speaking, there are three of them. But before I get into the details of each word on their universal character and validity, that how the same three paths seem to be suggested by philosophy, religion, and empirical evidence. Let's take philosophy first. And in philosophy, let's first take the first rate in Western and Eastern philosophy. Let's take Spinoza and let's take the Bhagavad Gita. Now, interestingly, the three paths suggested by Spinoza, the path of feminine virtues, masculine virtues, virtues of the informed mind, happen to be practically identical to the path suggested by the Gita. The path of Jnana Yoga, Brahma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. Now, after philosophy, when we come to religion, it's again very remarkable to note that most religions tend to have a trinity. And that the three aspects of the trinity, they happen to be in perfect correspondence to the three paths of happiness suggested by the Western philosophy. How they correspond, I'll gradually come to that. By Trinity, of course, what I mean is Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh of Hinduism, the Son, the Father, and the Holy Spirit of Christianity, Muhammad Allah al-Haq of Islam, Dharam Kaya, Sambhog Kaya, Nirman Kaya of Buddhism, the good, the bad, and ugly of Clint Eastwood. Okay, that was there to see whether you're still with me. Yeah, so finally, we come to empirical evidence. Now, according to this, humanity can be broadly classified into three personality types. And yes, the three personality types correspond to the three paths of happiness. Now, these three types are endomorphic, mesomorphic, ectomorphic. Endomorphic, these guys are soft and chubby. They're fond of luxury, food, social company. The mesomorphic, they are large-boned and muscular. They're active, combative, lustful for power. And the ectomorphic, they're small-boned and slender. They're cerebral, sensitive, introverted. And all of us are a combination of all three. Most of us are a combination of all three in varying degrees, which also kind of explains why one man's happiness is so different than that of another. Okay, so now coming to the first path of happiness, Bhakti Yoga, the path of the incarnation, the path of the soft and chubby endomorph. So the path of, you can say, love and devotion, love primarily, because what the incarnation is primarily asking us to do is to lead a life of love, a life devoid of sin. The connection between love and sin? Sins are absence of love. Okay, they're forms of hatred, greed, pride, anger, envy, hatred all. And hatred is not compatible with happiness. So with sins gone, hatred gone, love comes in. And once love comes in, voila, you're happy. Think about it. I mean, as cheesy as this might sound, your happiest days are ones when everyone seems nice, when you're running low on hatred. Okay, the demanding wife seems justified, the cab driver seems amiable, the obnoxious boss seems to have a point, and the receptionist seems positively endearing. Okay, which brings me to first love. Now, when you might have been in love, I believe, and if you remember first love, you remember the wonderful feeling of bliss that went with first love, the feeling of perpetually being on cloud nine. Now, could it be that Providence has deliberately embedded this program of first love in all of us to acquaint us with the power of love? I mean, if love for one can lead to this kind of happiness, imagine what kind of happiness could be yielded by a love for all. Now, the question is that what prevents us from walking this path of love? What prevents us from loving all? tempting and politically incorrect answer. We don't love all people because most people are bums. They don't deserve to be loved. Now, how do we get past this impediment? With the simple realization that be it the best or worst of us, we actually don't have much control over the way we are. We don't have much contribution to the way we are. In the family to which we were born, the school we went to, who sat next to us in class, which book we read at what point in time, and all such. I mean, neither our DNA nor our circumstances are our doing. So let's cut the bumps some slack. And because we won't be able to cut all that slack at one go, let's do it in phases. Okay? So let's remember that in that long road from hatred to love, you have certain pit stops of resentment, apathy, tolerance, cordiality, affection. So don't rush it. All right? Promote your subjects one pit stop at a time and then experience it for yourself. Experience how with each promotion, a packet of happiness just bursts into your being. For added flavor, for added pleasure, you might want to add some action to that promotion because in the end, real love is not an emotion. It's an act. It's an act of the will that ultimately transforms into a spiritual experience. And because it is an act, we can hope to get better with practice. Which brings me to the second path, Karma Yoga, selfless action. One acts, but he abandons the rights over the results of that act. The path of the active and combative mesomorph. In the Trinity of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, this is the Father. Father, indeed, because when you consider a kindergarten-going kid, that kid knows that it is him who has to finish his homework, it is him who has to tackle the school bully, it is him who has to deal with the teacher, but yes, if something drastically wrong happens, his father will be there for him. All right? So, Karma Yoga then, if I may borrow a cliche, is about do your best, forget the rest. Sounds simple, sounds soothing, but all of us know that it's easier said than done. Why? Because no matter how much we do, there's always that nagging feeling that we haven't done enough. You know, we've over the years come to abandon that wonderful, wonderful commodity called resignation. Too bad. Because neuroscience tells us that while grappling with a problem, when the mind resigns to an outcome, then the amygdala in the brain, it stops sending forth signals of stress and anxiety. And here lies the inbuilt impediment of Karma Yoga. All of us know that we need to resign at some point, but we are never able to figure out where exactly that point lies. I mean, how much of effort is commensurate for me to say that I did my best? Well, one way to look at that question could be to change perspective. Okay? And when we say that change perspective, I mean instead of figuring out ways to see how much more could be done to achieve a goal, what could be done to achieve a goal, we try to figure out how relevant the goal is. Okay, we disentangle ourselves from the goal, we step back from it, we take a wider view of it, and then it starts to come to us. That how much effort is commensurate. However, that still leaves us with a big problem. Because when you have been in this business for sizing up your goals for long, eventually what could happen is that most goals could begin to seem trivial. And a trivial goal does not instigate action. So we are up against a paradox again. Give too much relevance to your goals and you're looking at nervous tension. Give too little relevance to them and you're looking at an active depression. The solution? Well, no clear-cut one, but I get hints of it in my morning tennis every day. I mean, this is a place where I'm running, I'm sweating, I'm strategizing, I'm even been accused of deliberately making false line calls, okay? In short, I'm really keen to win. However, if I lose, that loss doesn't stay with me for more than 15 minutes. So I guess the real trick of Karma Yoga lies in being able to replicate that tennis match sagacity into everyday endeavor. And that brings me finally to the final path, that is Gyan Yoga, the path of the sensitive and introverted ectomorph, the path of the Holy Spirit, that all transcending and yet all pervading divine reality. Nirgun, Nirvishesh, Nirakar, Akarta, without quality, without attribute, without form, non-agent. And in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, when that boy's father is finishing telling about the divine reality to him, he in the end adds, and that Shwetaketu, art thou? Tat Twamasi. In fact, not just Shwetaketu, all of us are this divine reality. It is this divine reality that is the core of our existence. Vedanta says so. Eckhart and Thomas Aquinas say so. The Muslim Sufi Al-Ghazali says so. Buddhism says so. Tao and Zen says so. Also, quantum physics says so. For what is quantum entanglement and the collapsing of wave functions? It is a divine reality where the observer, the observed, and the observation blend into one. And what is the phenomena where they successfully separate a subatomic particle from its magnetic moment? Is it not a reality of which quality is not an attribute? And to realize our oneness with this divine reality is the ultimate goal of every human life. But why aren't we able to do so? Because as Al Pacino says in Scent of a Woman, it's too damn hard. Hooah. Okay? So, actually, it's hard because it's all uncharted territory. And what further cripples us in this uncharted territory is the fact that we are totally ignorant of our limitations. We will not believe that there is a limit to our levels of understanding, that we share 98% of our DNA with chimpanzees, and that a 2% jump in DNA should not result in an infinite jump in brain capacity. Okay, so just as a chimpanzee will never understand quantum theory, there are certain things which, even when explained to us, we will not understand. Similarly, we will not believe that there could be stimuli and sense perceptors other than the ones we know. We will not believe that language and reason are prime tools of understanding, have some inherent and inbuilt limitations. Wittgenstein in his Tracticus and Immanuel Kant in his critique of pure reason make some really valid expositions about these limitations. Which, of course, is not to say that knowledge and reason have no role whatsoever in Jnana Yoga. They do. It's just that by themselves, they're insufficient. They're not enough. It's like if you're a painter, then a good book containing some great critiques on painting could be of great help to you. But the book itself will not get you there. At some point, you'll need to get your hands dirty. You'll need to pick up paint and brush. So, how do you pick up paint and brush, and how do you get your hands dirty in Jnana Yoga? Simple. Mindfulness and meditation. Now, I'll not get into the details of these techniques, but I'll tell you what happens in your brain when you're mindful and you start to meditate. Okay, your brain starts to alter itself on a permanent basis. Okay, it's called neuroplasticity. Feel-good chemicals are secreted. Neural networks get rewired in a fashion that helps to keep you stress-free. Cortical thickness increases, which assists in problem-solving, planning, emotional regulation. Cell density decreases, but in areas that are responsible for stress. In short, feel-good after meditation isn't just psychological, all right? And which brings me to the point that, but anyway, just leave aside the neuroscience. Let's come to the fact that what is happening in terms of real experience. Well, in real experience, when you're being mindful, you're learning to respond rather than react. When you're meditating, you're learning to increase control over your attention. You're thus making yourself less and less vulnerable to any stray stimuli that might aggravate you. So with the stray stimuli and their uncontrolled reactions out of the way, the dust begins to settle. The mind becomes clearer. You can thus view yourself, know yourself with far greater clarity. Your prejudices, your preferences, your desires, your aversions. You can clearly see their machinations, their manipulations. Far more important than all this, when you're mindful, you begin to enjoy this whole show as a spectator or witness. The actor, I, me, myself, he gradually starts to lose relevance. And when you start to view the world with a little less of self-reference, things automatically begin to seem a bit more calm, a bit more pleasant. Well, that was about happiness and the paradox. And if you allow me just one more minute, I'll let you know about the cliches related to happiness. Okay, the cliches, those phrases which we hear so often that they cease to have any meaning for us whatsoever. Now, when we consider a cliche, we view it as a point, that right point, on the circle of our understanding. Then we take a side view, we realize that what we thought to be a circle is in fact a spiral. Okay? Then it's further revealed to us, okay, this is getting technical, it's further revealed to us that the cliche, which from our top view appears to be fixed, actually has the potential to exist at higher and higher planes of profundity. For example, The simple words, the simple cliche, do your best, forget the rest, is true for both a school-going child and the great philosopher Spinoza. But the insight that each derives from these words is hugely different. So all I'm trying to say is that when it comes to cliches related to happiness and spirituality, they tend to have more than one layer of meanings. So the thought that I want to leave with you with is, let's not be shy of revisiting our cliches. Let's not be shy of trying to unlock them using any combination of techniques from the three paths. And yes, while using the three paths, let's not forget, let's always keep in mind the basic principle that lies at their core. The principle that before we seek happiness, let's make ourselves more conducive to receiving it. Thank you.